in the chat button. And we appreciate everybody's presence here this morning. The Greater New Orleans Interfaith Climate Coalition is an interfaith coalition and organized around the concept that all of us are involved in being protectors of this planet. The old word was shepherds, and some of the texts that influence us, I think, are important to share at times. And rather than a prayer, this morning I would like to offer for everybody the first 6 verses of my father's favorite psalm, Psalm 24, 1 through 6. The earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof, the world and those that dwell therein. For he has founded it upon the seas and established it upon the rivers. Who shall ascend the hill of the Lord, and who shall stand in his holy place? He who has clean hands and a pure heart, who does not lift up his soul to what is false and does not swear deceitfully. He will receive blessings from the Lord and vindication from the God of his salvation. Such is the generation of those who seek him, who seek the face of the God of Jacob. Selah. With apologies for the patriarchal presentation of that text, today we move to more inclusive language, and our understanding in this group that there are other traditions in this world too, besides Christianity. Yet that sets a stage for me to listen to the voice of the instruction of other faith leaders on our appreciation of the planet on which we live. So with that, I welcome you here. Let's take a minute for one word, 2 word short introductions and go around the group. And if you could just say to start this day, who you are, where you live, and what brings you joy this morning.
Would you like to model that for us, Jim?
Okay. I am Reverend Jim Vanderweel. I live in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. And what brings me joy is seeing my companions in this journey. A little bit more than one word. Robert.
Robert Desmarais Sullivan from Lake Charles, living in New Orleans. I'm enthusiastic to see so many people finally becoming involved. And Wilma, would you like to go next?
Sure. Wilma Suber from New Iberia, Louisiana. And just being able to get up this morning and come into the office and participate in this process is absolutely fantastic. Thank you. Anne?
Oh, Anne, yes.
I'm Ann Meyer. I live in the lower 9th Ward in what was once called Bulbancha, the land of many tongues, I believe. So our multilingual introduction was absolutely fantastic. Miss Geraldine, do you want to go next?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. My name is Geraldine Watkins. I live in St. John the Baptist Parish, and being alive is what it's all about this morning. Michelle, Michael?
Thanks, Miss
Edie?
Geraldine.
Yes.
Yes, hope you're doing well. Michael Esaluka. I live in New Orleans and I work all over, or Bobancha, and I work all over Southeast Louisiana. And I am happy for this warm and balmy weather today, though it's a bit foggy, but I never mind the fog. And I will pass it to Zach.
Hey, good morning, y'all. My name is Zach Kopkin. I use he, him pronouns. I also live in Bulbancha. I'm an organizer with the Sierra Club, and I have resistance on my mind this morning. I will pass it to Cindy or Cynthia.
Thanks, Zach. It's Cindy. I am Cindy Robertson with Micah 6-8 Mission, doing work here in Southwest Louisiana in Sulphur. It's good to see y'all this morning. I'm not able to join these because I have a morning prayer service every morning at 9. So I'm glad to see an 8 o'clock meeting. And the thing that makes me happy is I have 2 hens that are laying eggs.
Wow.
Pass it on. Who hasn't got? Michael Tridico.
Thanks, Cindy. I live in Beauregard Parish on high ground north of Lake Charles. And I am just glad, like Wilma says, to be able to wake up and do something. I'm getting pretty old, about close to 80 years old, and it's been a long haul. I'm glad to see a lot of new people and some of the old people that have tried so hard all these years. That makes me happy that we're still here and that more people are getting involved.
Can I call on Vicky,
Oh.
please?
You're muted,
Good
Vicky.
morning, everybody. I got it. I'm Vicki Booth. I live in New Orleans, and I'm thankful for coffee this morning.
Thank you. Sage Michael, please.
Hello, everyone. I'm Sage Michael. I'm with Healthy Golf, New Orleans Climate Just Organized. I'm in New Orleans / Bobancha originally. I'm actually coming from our golf gathering from Camp Beckwood in Alabama. It was a great gathering, and it's great to be on this call continuing this work.
Thank you. Good to see you. Charlotte Clark.
Hey everyone, good morning. I'm Charlotte. I'm with Common Ground Relief. We're neighbors with Anne in the lower 9th ward in Bulbancha, and I'm gonna have my video off because I'm walking my dog and getting ready to go into the office. But puppies are bringing me joy this morning, and I'm excited to be here and hear what you're up to.
Lee Rochelle.
Hey everyone, I'm Lee Rochelle, she, her pronouns. I am the director for the Louisiana Interchurch Conference, and I live in Abbeville, Louisiana. It is a great joy to me that the electrician is on his way because our AC unit is having issues due to electricity. And so I may go off camera as a result of that, but I am grateful for them being on the way.
Wonderful. Good to see you here. Geraldine, ma'am. Do you have volume today, Geraldine?
Yes, I have,
Wonderful.
but I spoke already.
Okay. I'm sorry. I missed that.
Thank you.
How about Rebecca?
Good morning, everyone. I'm Rebecca Broom. I live in Covington, Louisiana. Been a part of the GNOICC. Just excited to learn more and increase my knowledge base so I can do more. Thanks.
All right. Zach, have you been?
I have, yeah. Thanks, Jim.
Is there anyone who has not shared? Peter?
Yeah, Pete Diggory, New Orleans, and I'm happy to have a whole computer screen here of old friends and new friends and allies. That makes me very happy.
Have we missed anyone?
Lisa
Uh,
Williams.
Yep, I'm out here. Woo, and doing 5 things at one time. Hi
Yes.
guys. I'm Pastor Lisa. I live on the West Bank of Eldridge, but I pastor a service in the night ward in the Desire area. And what I'm happy for life. Yes. Yeah. Hey guys. I'm done.
Thank you.
Mhm.
And Tor.
Morning. My name is Tor Olson. I live in Washington State in the Puget Sound area of Seattle. My fascination is the Antarctic and the Arctic. I'll hand it to Charlotte Clark.
Oh, I went already, but
Oops, me.
Okay. I believe that should be it from what I can see. And I appreciate seeing everybody here, allies in this effort. It's very important that we, in my view of this, build this connection in this area as strong as we can, because we are right in the heat of the battle against the destruction of our planet. As an organization, the GNOICC has been closely in touch with folks up and down an area and other groups in this area, particularly out of New Orleans, more so than Baton Rouge, where I now live. But in the river parishes, we have heard what a beautiful land they had once upon a time before it was overrun by the corporations, which have put them on the edges of being of old communities. They experienced white flight and figured it was white flight. All of our effort as this organization is intermingled with the ideas that all of us have a role to play and everybody is equally protected. That's my faith tradition as a retired Universalist minister who spent 15 years in the New Orleans area, right through the worst of the Katrina era. And so I see the situation in Southwest Louisiana as being very important. And that led me last year to protest before one of the LDEQ hearings, with whom GNOICC has been very engaged in an effort to advance their thinking in terms of taking care of our planet, not just jumping through whatever the technicalities of the law might be. So, there is a part of me that gets a little bit upset, and I think others do too, when people who are in official capacities and are supposed to be tending to the care of our planet and protecting it for us as citizens on this planet, look instead to the requests that come from the corporations and those who wish to push the boundaries into people's lives. And what we have seen is that some people have gotten ill, very ill, therefore the name Cancer Alley. I have heard Death Alley as well, right near us in our neighborhood. No longer are people on this planet strangers to me or to any of us. Everyone is important on this planet. And so as we see this language being written about sacrifice zones, one of my statements several places, and others have heard this as well, and others have said it well before me, there should be no sacrifice zones in the United States of America. You know, I mean, there's a part of me that says, oh my God, what are we doing to ourselves? And in the effort of trying to get through, I note all the comments, wonderful. Zach adds, or on earth. Exactly. As we try to get through and in this area and compete with those who push against us, and would promote disinformation and promote the we've done everything that the law requires us to do as a song and dance out there. It seems to me like our effort must be to try to be as educated as we can and then carry that message to more people, because the word that we have all read, I believe together, is that it is not those who we elect who make all of the decisions for us. If we want our representatives to understand where we are coming from as individuals and as an organization of allies in a state of alarm of what is happening to our planet, we have to express that as strongly as we can to those individuals. And that is the reason why this program today has arisen. I did go to Lake Charles at an LDEQ hearing last year. I was surprised to hear that there are a number of LNG plants on the drawing board for the boards for the movement in that area, and was absolutely alarmed when I saw all of the way that that entire southwest portion of Louisiana has been overtaken by the chemical pollution. And in that area, all of the lights, all of the equipment that they have built, and they continue to think that they can continue to destroy our earth. And so we are here this morning to learn a little bit more from two people who have stepped forward and willing to share some more information with us as we look at the beginning of 2023 and what we can do going forward. So now I would like to, if anyone has any questions or comments or would like to offer any correctives, I try to paint with a broad brush the approach that leads us to this point. The golf gathering, I think, was wonderful. I tuned into a couple of those meetings. I am one of those who needs to know a little bit more about what is going on with that organization. There is, yes, there is death row out there, and we see it. And this, to me, is GNOICC's response to those who preceded us on this planet, who said, folks, you need to have your eyes open. What's happening to the birds? What's happening to the flowers in the fields? And today, what's happening to the monarchs? What are we as people doing that need to be corrected as we move through a next transition, equipped with communication skills we did not have 50 years ago? There is no going back. We can only go forward. We are doing it together. And with that, I really appreciate the presence of Michael Esaluka. I believe. I've heard it before, and she will explain a little bit about the efforts that we have already taken in this area and try to mobilize us all to be more linked together as an organization as we move into 2023. Michael.
Thanks for that, Reverend Jim. And you pronounce it correct. It's just sounds like how it's spelled, Esaluka. And y'all bear with me if my internet's kind of shaky here in the 7th Ward. So if I go in and out, just let me know. My name's Michael. I'm an organizer with Healthy Gulf. I organize throughout the southeastern portion of the state, but I'm here today to talk about the LNG methane gas or fossil gas crisis that's taking place on our coast right now. And so LNG is something that not a lot of people have a familiarity with. It's an acronym that stands for liquefied natural gas. So this is fracked gas that's taken out of shale fields, often in the Permian Basin or the Haynesville shale field in North Louisiana. It's cooled. It's like cooled into sub-zero temperatures, which condenses the gaseous material compounds into a liquid, and then it's piped to our coast and exported for use overseas. The United States is one of the largest exporters of natural gas in the world, and that build out of natural gas is largely concentrated in the Gulf region. And I think this is particularly alarming because even those of us who work in the climate or environmental justice space in Louisiana, many of us are not even aware about what's taking place on our coast. So I'm going to drop a link to a map real quick in the chat. And on this map, you can see that there are nearly 20 new or proposed expansions, new export gas terminals or proposed expansions for existing gas terminals planned throughout the Gulf region. The majority of those are concentrated in Louisiana and on the Southeast Texas coast. So that constitutes the largest build out of fossil gas exports in the world. And that means that Louisiana is ground zero for the expansion of fossil fuels and the petrochemical industry. Because not only is this LNG exported overseas for use in largely Southeast Asia, China, and Japan, despite the claims that it's being used to protect the people of Ukraine and Western Europe. Not only is the LNG used for that purpose, it also works as a feedstock that's used in many of the industrial manufacturing processes that are undertaken by the facilities in the petrochemical corridor of Cancer Alley. And I should say the area where these LNG facilities are concentrated, and I think Wilma Subra and Michael Tritico and Cindy and other folks in the line will be able to add a lot more detail and a lot more specificity and expertise. I'm an organizer, not a scientist, but the area where these facilities are concentrated is already a built up area. It doesn't have the catchy name of Cancer Alley, and so it may not be as visible or as in the news, but our brothers and sisters in Southwest Louisiana and Southeast Texas, they need our solidarity and support. Because if these facilities are built, as my friend James Hyatt puts it, what happens in the Gulf in the next 4 years dictates what happens on the planet in the next 50 years. So that means everybody in Louisiana and in the climate movement has a duty to lend our solidarity to the people of Southwest Louisiana and Southeast Texas as they fight against these facilities. Now, there's more and more local groups emerging in Southwest Louisiana. There's Micah 6.8, which Cindy leads. There's the Vessel Project, Restore, which I believe is Michael Tritico's organization. And there's also a new group that's emerging called For a Better Bayou. There's a lot of local organizing that's starting to happen more and more that's building on decades of organizing in the Southwest region by communities like Mossville and others. And it's time for us in the Southeast region to stand up and say, we're not going to take this, and we're not going to let our friends in the Southwest region of our state be sacrificed for the fossil fuel industry and for 20 more years of profit by fossil fuel industry execs. And before we turn things over so I can show you a short video that we made that kind of allows some frontline leaders to speak to this issue in their own words. I just want to say that this is not just happening in the Southwest portion of the state. There is the Plaquemines LNG facility, which is currently under construction in Plaquemines Parish, about an hour and a half south of
south of New Orleans. And this would be one of the largest LNG export terminals in the world if constructed, if successfully constructed. This facility, along with its associated Gator Express pipeline, would permanently destroy over 708 acres of wetlands, permanently destroy them, taking away the natural marshlands that protects us from hurricanes and storms. So these LNG facilities are not only destroying our coast, they're not only jeopardizing our fisheries and our heritage and way of life in Louisiana, they're also escalating the climate crisis. And so there's this constant cycle, right, where communities are displaced from the coast to make way for LNGs, and then the LNGs are escalating hurricanes. They're driving up flooding and storms that again propel people to be further displaced. And so we have a short window of time to really seize on this issue and to make the case that these facilities cannot be funded. And I will say that, you know, with the scale of the build out that we face, 17 new facilities or expansions, we cannot continue to just take a facility by facility whack-a-mole approach. We have to find a framework to connect these fights. We have to build a coalition across our coast. I say coast to coast, top to bottom. We need everybody in the climate movement in Louisiana taking this seriously, standing up and saying enough is enough. We refuse to be a sacrifice zone. And so with that, I'm going to ask you, Pete Diggory, to play this, cue up this video. So this is a short, it's just about 7 minutes. I hope we have the time for this today. And just leading up to it, if you can just pause it for a moment.
We're just this big sacrifice.
Yeah, just pause it for a moment. And yeah, it'll feature our friend Cindy, who's on the line with us today. You know, in this video, these 4 leaders really take aim at not only these LNG facilities, but the big banks that are financing them. And we have to understand that money is the fuel that fans the flame of climate crisis. And so if we go after the money, the money that's backing these projects, that's another strategy to take them down. And so we can watch this short video, and then we'll kick it over to Thor. And then I think there's some time for discussion.
It's like we're just this big sacrifice zone going down the Sabine River.
Like we're the dumping stock for oil and gas industry. This is where all the money is flowing, but it's not flowing to our communities.
What happens here on the Gulf Coast in the next 4 years really dictate what's going to happen on the planet in the next 50 years.
Lake Charles won't sit idly by and become an island and wiped off the Gulf Coast because of industry and their contributions to global warming.
There are more than 20 projects proposed along the Gulf, with the majority of those projects being proposed here in Southwest Louisiana or Southeast Texas. It just seems like they've decided that this area is their dumping ground.
Yeah, it really makes you wonder, like, why are they wanting to put them right here? And I think the answer is that they think that we don't care. They think that people are disposable, dispensable.
We just feel like, you know, we've been made into a sacrifice. The people who are funding this crisis and funding these industry are the very banks that we put our money in. And so banks such as Bank of America and JP Morgan and Citibank, those banks are the banks that are giving money to the industry so that they can build these projects here.
If we don't do anything, we know what the future looks like.
The
The clock is ticking. It's now been 6 years since the Paris Climate Agreement was adopted, but a report from 6 NGOs called Banking on Climate Chaos found that in that time, the 60 biggest private banks in the world have financed $3.8 trillion in fossil fuels. Campaigners say that money has funded projects which have consequences for communities around the world.
So no new fossil fuel production starting today. That's like zero. Does your bank have a policy against funding new oil and gas products? Mr. Diamond.
Absolutely not.
Through banking crises and rubber stamp mergers, your banks dominate the banking industry. Together you have over 13 trillion, $13,000 billion in assets. That's half the nation's GDP.
I'm Rashetta Ozan. I have been in Southwest Louisiana for 19 years.
I'm James Hyatt. I'm a resident of Lake Charles. I was born across the river there in Sulphur.
My name is Cindy Robertson. Serve justice, love mercy, walk humbly.
Lottie Lars, born and raised Lake Charles, Louisiana.
A lot of time people outside of the state only know New Orleans. When you talk about Louisiana, you talk about New Orleans. Well, if Louisiana is shaped like a boot, New Orleans is the toe, and Lake Charles is the heel of the boot. We're on the other side of the state.
There's birds and there's animals.
The food is excellent. It's probably the best food ever.
Most important, my family is here.
So I have 6 children, 3 girls and 3 boys.
My kids love this area. I want them to be able to live here.
I don't ever want them to have to fight as much as I have to fight. The biggest problem we have here in Southwest Louisiana and Southeast Texas is the industries and the pipelines.
This river right here, this lake and the river is under a seafood advisory. You're not supposed to eat more than 2 meals a month of certain fish and crabs out of this estuary. And that is directly caused by these facilities who have polluted. And they don't pay to clean it up. They've never paid to clean it up. The fines that they get are like a slap on the wrist. Louisiana is sportsman's paradise. You know, we pride ourselves on the hunting and the fishing. Well, if you can fish, but you're not supposed to eat it, what's the point?
In 2020, industrial facilities in the state have dumped over 11 million pounds of toxic chemicals into our waterways.
This is going to have a cumulative impact on the health of our communities, and we need to do something about it now.
I've been on several calls with all of these banks and asked them, why are they putting funds before families and policy before people and money before men and women. And if you look at their websites, a lot of them have these equity clauses, and they go against them when they invest into the very industry that harm the communities that they claim they care so much about.
But they just tell you we want to be community friendly, but they're not. They're dollar friendly on the backs of the community, and that's all.
If you're going to continue to invest in these industries that come into our communities, poison our water, poison our air, and contribute to climate change, which increases the hurricanes that come here and the storms and the natural disasters that we get, then we're not going to put our money in your banks. We're not going to have accounts with you, because our money is important. The money we're putting into your bank is the same money that you're giving the industry to come back and harm us.
We don't need industry. Industry needs us, Lake Charles existed before any of these were built. This was a place of paradise to come swim and play, and a tourist place. Enough's enough. Defend SWLA.
That's right.
Thank you, Michael, for that. Any words Or should we turn it over to keep the program moving? We have just a little time, and maybe we'll come back with questions later.
Let's go ahead.
Okay, Tor, your section, please.
Hey, if I can share screen.
That was pretty informative. I'd like to say thanks.
So can everybody see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. Forgive me, I'm just a tad bit sleepy here. The challenge here is, first and foremost, that among my peers, we discuss this with great familiarity. We understand the physics to it. We understand the climate. And so I'm going to do my best today to give you a view that you might understand without all this scientific background. This image shows a generalized understanding of how our atmosphere works. And it's divided from the equator to the pole in roughly 3 cells. The Hadley cell at around the equator, the polar cell at the poles, and you get this circulation pattern. This is why we have the Sahara Desert or the desert in the Southwest. This is because air around 30 degrees north and south is descending and it's dry. If it's rising, it tends to be wet. If you look at the moisture map of the world, you roughly see the same pattern. Around the equator, it's very wet. At the poles, it's very dry. It's very warm at the equator, very cold at the poles. And so this is how our world planetary weather has worked for all of our recorded history. In Antarctica, you have this particular wind that the name katabatic is actually a desert word, but it's a very good description to say that you have this air that sweeps off the continent of Antarctica, and it shapes the oceans and ice pack around it. And it's driven partly because of the polar cell, which is putting air from a high altitude and dumping it on Antarctica. And that air sweeps off and it forms these very strong katabatic winds. And this is the basis of how Antarctica works. And the ocean currents around Antarctica are some of the fastest and strongest in the world. You've got a circulation pattern that is driven by these very powerful winds. And this is what it used to be. And you have this a deep water that tended to surface up a little bit. It tends to be a little warmer because water is densest at 3 degrees. But on the most part, you had this Antarctic surface water that was very cold. It was about -2 degrees Celsius, which is the freezing temperature of seawater. This is where we see sort of the biggest change. The ice pack is where I'm going to start, because as the weather sped up, if you put more gases in the atmosphere, you speed up these cells. They get faster, and that results in more wind at the ground level of the polar cell, pushing ice away from Antarctica. And we see that for a while there, it increased the amount of ice quite substantially. That was in 2014. This is the orange line. But gradually it swung to the other thing, and now we're on record lows this year, and last year was a record low. We're seeing where things are beginning to break down as far as the ice pack. Well, the ice pack in this area here, you still have very cold ocean. This is for a large part because seawater, it can get colder than fresh water. A lot of this is below freezing, and so from the point of view of the mainline scientific community, they see that Antarctica is not a concern because it's not getting warmer on the surface. Well, the problem we face is that in our model, this is the outline of where the polar cell is pushing water away from Antarctica. And you can see this is where the intermediate cell is pushing water towards Antarctica. This is the same circulation pattern you will see on the first slide of how planetary work. And so if you're speeding these up, you should see it in the ocean. And so in this anomaly map, where the ocean is colder, it got pushed farther north. Where the ocean is warmer, it got pushed farther south. Well, this is all fine, but we notice that these outcrops of much warmer water is appearing along the coast of Antarctica. And this posed a puzzle, which I kind of came to a realization last year, like my peers. I've worked in geology when I was in college in the 80s, and one by one, my peers have all gone silent. I really never understood why. And the rough logic is that as this katabatic wind gets stronger and pushes the sea ice farther out, it is drawing in warmer water underneath it. Kind of like the ocean works, if you push it this way, this has to compensate. Because the really deep currents take a while. They have a lot of inertia. They don't like to move. And so you got to a measured 4 degrees Celsius underneath the Thwaites ice sheet last year. And what I saw is that these projections of warm water are getting hotter, and they're getting hotter very fast. And what's really important to note is that ice shelves are only stable if the water's cold. And if the ice shelf isn't here, all of the Antarctic ice sheet is not stable either, because when an ice shelf breaks up, all this resets at about 10 times as fast as it did before. And so I've done a projection before that say the rate at which you're moving the ice, because the water underneath the ice shelf when they measured it in the 1990s was about -2 degrees Celsius, what it should be underneath an ice sheet. Now it's 4 degrees Celsius. They're perfectly reasonable numbers that it could go around 6 degrees Celsius. Somewhere around 5 to 6 degrees Celsius, the ice shelves will start to break up. It's a temperature thing because you're melting out so much ice in them from underneath, you're destabilizing them. So I've heard these wild theories in my group about how fast Antarctica was going to break up. Now I'm beginning to believe them, because if it was just a matter of pushing more ice offshore, I would say that's not a concern. But some warm water that's getting up underneath it to replace it, that water is really warm. And that's right at the most sensitive place in Antarctica where it can really cause damage. There's precedent for this. I dug up this article that there's been a lot of research on this period of time prior to the modern age. And about, 8 million years ago, you had a temperate forest across the northern hemisphere. It was cool to mixed forest, meaning you had broadleaf and you had pines. And so this is not the first time the earth has gotten warm, but I got to caution you, it can get warm really fast. And if you understand the effect of what really warm water can do under an ice sheet, I'm not even sure New Orleans is going to be there in 30 years. I mean, I'm really beginning to have serious doubts. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you, Tor. And let's just throw it open for questions. Can we ask people to please put up their hands if they have a question, and we'll try to answer those whose hands go up first about this entire program. Lisa, do you have something you would like to say?
Yeah, what's the way around? So what do we do?
What's the way? Good question.
What do we do?
Well, is that for Michael or for me?
Whomever.
Tori, you could speak to the science side and I could speak to the organizing side, if that makes sense.
Why don't you go first?
Okay, well, Pastor Lisa, I haven't met you before, but right now what I'm working with we've got a good sized group of about 20 folks, so a group of about this size that are working together to hold actions and community events across the state of Louisiana and potentially into East Texas in late March. So we've got commitments from folks in Southwest Louisiana, in New Iberia, in St. Bernard Parish, and the river parishes, in New Orleans. So we're going to be holding simultaneous actions and events during this week of action to raise awareness about the LNG build out, to bring more people into our movement, and really to put the heat on the bank executives that are funding these projects, the oil and gas executives that are profiting off the destruction of our coast, and the legislators that are making this that are allowing this to happen.
Okay, and I'd like to get that video, because I think one of the things that I could also do to help with the cause is to put the information out in our local communities, because I know they don't know what's happening, and that video is a good lead-in to say, okay, here is what we can do. So I really need to get that video, guys.
Could Could somebody share your, I know you're driving, it looks like you're on your phone. Could somebody share Pastor Lisa's contact info with me, and then I'll just follow up with you separately, ma'am?
Okay, sounds good.
Michael, this is Ann. I'll connect the two of you by email.
Thanks, Ann.
Thank you. Tor, do you have a response to that? And then I want to go to Michael Tritty.
Certainly, just real quick. In history, whenever you get a big change in your environment, you're looking at a migration from, famously, the Sahara used to be a grassland and it dried up. So people moved into the Nile River Valley. What I would hope is this is done in a just and equitable and humane way, that people really follow closely what's happening in Antarctica, because at the time that the seas really start to rise, they will rise quite quickly. Yeah. Once you've gone beyond the stability of the ice shelves in Antarctica, the seas will rise. I mean, I've heard upper estimates as fast as a foot a year.
Okay, thank you. Michael, with Restore, your comments, please.
Yeah, what Tor was talking about, the relationship of the Arctic to these LNG things. You heard James in the video, James Hyatt, talking about the seafood advisory in the Calcasieu Estuary. Those very same chemicals were transported north by the wind to the Eskimos up in the Inuit communities. They have a body burden based on the Calcasieu chemicals, the chlorinated hydrocarbons, PCBs, dioxins. So it is a global problem. As far as beyond the Arctic, what's going on in Southwest Louisiana is incredible. There is a breakthrough this past month. The Federal Energy Regulatory Commission let slip in one of its documents that for the Cameron LNG facility, which already exists, they finally admitted that there are 737 households within the vapor cloud coverage. 737 homes could be burnt to a crisp with everybody in them. Now, that is a sparsely populated area. It's more populated than the Plaquemines LNG area, but it's far less populated than where the Driftwood LNG is being constructed, or where the Lake Charles LNG is being converted to an export terminal, or where the Magnolia LNG is being constructed. So Southwest Louisiana may be the place where we burn up 15 or 20,000 people in one fire. To me, that is an incredible hazard. The information about that has been kept secret. I've tried for years, starting in 1978, my first letter about LNG, and I have been stonewalled ever since then. Fred Millar and Jerry Havens, two experts on safety nationally, have also been stonewalled. Now, to me, it's going to probably take something like a Bhopal on the Bayou, a tremendous fire, killing thousands of people before the regulators get serious. I don't know how to get through that logjam. It was sort of a slip that FERC made last month, but it tells you that a lot of people are at risk. So I think that if we're going to first save the people of Southwest Louisiana and then the planet, this is an incredible mission. It is incredibly challenging. And I'm glad that people are beginning to look at it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Could I add something to what Michael was putting out there?
Sure.
So looking at the existing LNGs that we're talking Southwest Louisiana, the very first one was an import facility. The permitting started in '78 and the last shipment was in 2012 and it was called Lake Charles LNG. The three that are operating right now are the Hackberry, and it's called Sempra, but the community knows it as Hackberry. So when you start using the titles versus the location, you have to remember that. And then there's the one at Sabine Pass, and one of the ladies in the video talked about Sabine Pass, and it is the one that had the big storage tank that sprung leaks, and it's at the corner of Sabine River coming into the Gulf, but it's on the Louisiana side. The other side starts Texas. And then there's one at Calcasieu Pass. So when you go on Highway 27 south of Sulphur, you get to Hackberry, then you get to the Sabine Pass one, which is, they'll talk about it as being in Cameron. So then you would cross the ferry, go towards Texas, and you get to the one at the Sabine Pass. So I think you need to call them both things so that the local people understand which one of the threes. And one of the presentations I did over in the Lake Charles Sulphur area talked about the track record and the emissions and all that were coming out of those existing operating three. Thanks.
Thank you. I believe that I heard last year that there are 9 proposed new LNG plants in the Cameron Parish on the drawing board right now. And this is why we are really in the belly of the beast with regards to this, particularly if you put it against the background of Tor's presentation this morning. I noticed it is
So, a couple of months ago, we had a hearing in Cameron on the one that's proposed for the other corner where the Calcasieu Ship Channel hits the Gulf. We have the one operating on the Cameron side, and they want to put one on the other side. And all of those ship docks are within the Calcasieu Channel, not in the Gulf. So erosion's going to be horrible when you have one on either side as it hits the Gulf.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, it is 9 o'clock. I expected this might take a little bit longer. If anybody would like to stay for another 10 or 15 minutes and extend this discussion, we can. Those who have to leave are blessed in their departing. And I had wanted to go first to Peter and then to Cynthia, who had her hand up but just took it down, I believe. So if you have a comment, let's take another 10 or 15 minutes for comments here. Peter Deeger, will you share your thoughts?
Yeah, I just wanted to underscore the truth of Michael's presentation on financing. The simple reality is we must stop burning fossil fuels.
Yes.
It's just as simple as that. That's the bottom line. That's the answer to Reverend Lisa's question. We have to stop burning fossil fuels. And that includes using petrochemical products such as plastics. It's got to end. There is no alternative to the earth, to the human race. Case closed. It's over.
Yeah. Thank you. Cynthia had to go for her prayer breakfast, so we'll try to facilitate that later. Michael, did you have something additional that you wish to say? Michael of Restore?
Michaelessa Lusa had to leave. She had a class. She signed out in the chat. She did leave her email and her telephone number. So if anybody wants to do that, there are a number of telephone numbers in the chat.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. Robert.
Yes, I want to bring everyone's attention to a book called Strangers in Their Own Land. It is about Louisiana. And Michael Tritico is one of the people that the author followed as she was writing this book. And Michael, do you mind if I read a bit of what she said about you?
I don't mind, but at one point she said I was tall, but I'm not tall.
She says, Mike Tritico, a political independent and son of a furniture store owner, told me of right-wing friends who vehemently opposed his activities. A tall man of 70 with a teacherly manner and encyclopedic grasp of local industry, he was seen as a recluse by some, or as a saint by others, and as a thorn in the side by state regulatory officials. Michael, my mother was one of the ones who thought of you as a saint.
Thank you. Thank you. I read that book as well. Recently, last fall, I was in, I took a little cruise to Spain and Portugal. And I wrote to several people that as our ship was passing through the Straits of Gibraltar, on one side, I saw the windmills on the southern coast of Spain. On the other side, I saw a boat with LNG on the side. I have recently read that LNG, according to the folks in Europe, that LNG has been declared liquefied natural gas, methane, hydrogen, you call it whichever you wish, has been declared a green energy in Europe. This is one of the reasons why I think the banking effort is very important, because it is not a green energy. We have to keep it in the ground. I noticed my friend Zach has his hand up, and I'd like to turn to Zach next and your input. Anything?
Sure, yeah. Thanks, Reverend Jim. So Jim has been joining a group, or just started. It just started, so everyone just started. It's a group that is focused on how do we spread those sorts of stories that Michael E. just showed us in that film, and how do we build our own skills to tell our own stories, to connect with people around us. I see GNOICC as being part of a network that can reach different demographics, different sets of people with this information, and I think we all need to be coordinated together in that effort. I think some people are interested in the climate science. Some people are interested in the risk, the safety risk that Michael Tritico mentioned. And we need to be putting all those pieces together and reaching everyone to build a whole movement against this stuff. Because like Michael Esaluka was saying earlier on, like a lot of people don't know what LNG is. That's by design. They're putting these things in communities that don't often have the political kind of clout to make these things something that far away folks will pay attention to. And so we need to help lend our solidarity and understand why this matters to each of us and people that we care about, to hear those stories and to amplify them. I think that's, that's the most important thing that we can do in terms of organizing, and ultimately with the goal of not just stopping LNG, but understanding, it's an entire set of interconnected issues, from fracking to petrochemicals and all of that. We've got to be connecting those dots between things. Because I think, Michael Lucas said that fighting one facility at a time just isn't going to cut it. We need to be building something that is overarching. So that's something that I'm working on as an organizer at the Sierra Club, but I'm making sure that is not something that is held within the Sierra Club, but that I'm just using the time that I have to build a network with all of y'all.
Thank you.
So I'll put my contact info in there as well, and I'll invite y'all to participate as we build this thing out.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We need you all. we need the efforts of all of us moving forward. Peter, let me just say one thing first, that I have connected with a writer who I followed for a number of years early in my life, who also has roots to the Seattle area. John Coleman is a writer who has researched the Mayan Empire and has come up with recent books which look at the universe as having its own energy. And the Mayans had tapped into that. I was very interested in the Mayan calendar at the time. Many of the more scientific folks said, what is that? What are they talking about? But he mentions the difference between Chronos time and Kairos time, and said the Mayans' emphasis was on Kairos time, and that the energy of this time is different than previous times. And that's why these things are accelerating as well. And writes that we have the possibility of heaven on earth. But to me, being drawn to the wordsmithing of this effort, since I'm not very good in that area, it's important to me to do that. It looks at the fact that our planet is also, like us, the source of life, and has perhaps its own intentions in all of this. And that to me makes a little bit of sense, because we tend to think laterally. What are we doing with our neighbors? What are we doing? Are we taking care of the animals? Yeah, we're losing a few of them. So what? This idea of a larger consciousness than our human consciousness kind of appeals to me as perhaps a way to break through some of the stumbling blocks that we face. Maybe it's just me, but that's me on this. Peter.
Yeah, I have a question for Michael and Wilma. It's such an honor to have both of them here with us. Thank you for being here. And that is these LNG companies. We've heard Tor's projection of rapid sea level rise, but even the most conservative science says what, 1 foot to 18 inches in the next couple decades. That's the most conservative government projection. At what point do these LNG facilities just become not viable due to sea level rise?
Rapidly. They're all right on the waterline. All of the dock facilities around the world are right on the waterline, because sea level, I think it's risen 25 centimeters in the last 75 years.
Yeah, Michael and Wilma, do you have any data on that? Have these companies analyzed that?
Well, first,
it's been brought up, but they're sort of ignoring it.
Yeah. So first we had hurricanes over in the Lake Charles area, which impacted where the LNGs were, and they went underwater, and they evacuated the people, and then they couldn't get back in to see what was going on to address the damage that had occurred. So that tells you every time a hurricane comes by, if they go under, their structures go underwater, it can be 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. They physically going to be underwater all the time. And then there was another one being proposed off of Grand Isle. And if you've looked at the data lately, they just, what are we going to do with Grand Isle? How can we save Grand Isle? Well, it's going to be offshore. So when a hurricane comes, they can evacuate it. And then they're going to just be able to sit back and hope it doesn't blow when the hurricane comes on shore, because they won't have access even after it goes through to get back out there and tend to it. So they're waiting to have bombs go off when we have weather.
Among other things, it's an incredibly bad investment for these banks, isn't it?
Structurally wise, yes.
When Hurricane Laura came through, the eye of the storm passed east of the LNGs, which spared them. Even at that, the Hackberry LNG had fireballs blasting from its escape valves because it lost the grid power to keep the LNG refrigerated. If they lose the refrigeration, the tanks, the LNG expands 600 times, which would split any tank. And so the Cameron LNG had a very close call. Their diesel alternative electricity generating system ran out of diesel. And had it not been for General Honore having in Hurricane Rita established a way to get diesel into the Southwest Louisiana area during a time of such crises, Cameron LNG would have been lost. It would have been a total rupture of its tanks. And, you know, that the Hackberry area would have had that 737 households burned, except they had evacuated. So the precarious nature of the placement of the existing LNGs is an accident waiting to happen. It's not an accident. They call it, they used to call it act of God. Thank goodness they've quit saying act of God. They now call it force majeure. But they're relying on that escape clause legally to get them out of any financial trouble when it happens. As far as New Orleans going underwater, I've been trying to get it, you know, there's a thing called location, location, location. Well, I've been saying relocation, relocation, relocation. I have two sons that live in New Orleans, and they are diehard. They're planted there. And no matter what I have said through the years about that place being doomed and everything south of there being doomed, yeah, you know, it doesn't seem to sink in. People have a denial, a blindness when it comes to living in vulnerable zones. There are people that are not going to move no matter what happens to them. But then there are people like Travis Dardar, who moved from the old St. Charles. He's now in Cameron Parish. There are people with common sense. So it's a matter, I guess, of natural selection. I got on my soapbox again. Oh, one more thing, Arlie. When Arlie said I was a saint, I am not a saint. I rely on the Creator's mercy. I have to rely on His mercy. I hope I can make the cut.
So can I say something? It's Pastor Lisa. Can I say, in reference to what I think his name Michael was saying, people don't leave New Orleans if people are not saying things because we don't know. People don't know these things. If people knew these things and they would say it on a consistent basis, I believe folks would either gather together to do something about it or leave the city. And that's my intention. My intention is to do something, or I'm leaving, me and my whole family, children and grandchildren and all, because I've never heard it like this before. And I don't think the people of New Orleans either have heard it like this either. Nope.
Well, I've been saying it for years and years, and I've tried to get coverage, and Mark Slefstein has done some articles, but you know, I don't know how much extra publicity it takes to get the word out to the people in New Orleans. But I mean, even Katrina didn't wake them up. You know, I mean, they went through Katrina and still didn't see it. I don't know what to do in New Orleans.
Because Michael, because no one is tying but the average person in New Orleans is not tying Hurricane Katrina to LNG and anything like that. They don't have a clue how those things go together. Trust me when I tell you that. For anyone to even react and say, oh, wow, we got to do something. People don't know. They don't.
Well, you know, if they go underwater 20, what is it, 27 times so far New Orleans is flooded, you don't have to know why, you just have to know that it happens. And then
That's
you
right.
move. And that, you know, I don't understand.
Because we're told that we live in this area where we're in a, Michael, this is my home. I grew up here. I'm 58, served 34 years in the military, came back home, but never with these things in mind. And Michael, I have never thought about like this. So call me ignorant or whatever, but as of today and forward, I will not be. Yeah.
Well, I think, you know, I want to thank you all for being here. And I would say that from my point of view on this, having lived through some of this too, we are now in the belly of the beast. And there are things that we can do. And this program is the type of program that I would like to see more of, but I would like to see 10,000 people tuning into this on a TED Talk. I would like to see this be the sort of thing that rises up in Louisiana, where we say to the world, hey, wait a minute, all of us have to learn, including some of us who are in this group. And when we do that, we will be effective leaders as we push together as a community into a world that is changing. Almost everybody in the scientific community that I know says that we are moving into either the sixth extinction or the highest level of potential of humanity, and that we have it in our power to do something about it. This has been discussed in the philosophies, and the prophets for a long time have said the same thing. So I'd encourage everybody to do as much of this type of programming as we can. If we need to set up a program with every different group in the Southwest part of Louisiana, perhaps we have, even with the 9 of us right here, enough connections in this state of Louisiana that we could reach a lot of people, a lot of people. And that's my hope going forward. Miss Geraldine, I see.
I'm sorry. The only thing that came to mind, you know, we have all this education, but a lot of people don't have the money to pack up and move. They have no place to go because they don't have the funds, you know. And after we've been hit so many different times with the storm, the hurricanes, tornadoes, and anything that
it's true too
destroys, you know, our way of living, we're still grasping, trying to come back from where we were. So it's fundamental. If we could get them to pay us for what they're doing to us, we might be able to pack up and move. Otherwise, you know, like I say, I'm stuck here. I really don't want to go, but you know, if I had the funds, I might pack up, sell everything, pack up, and go somewhere else. But where are you gonna go? The desert would be the safest place right now.
Thank you. That's so important. Everybody has a different situation in life. We come from many different places and with different backgrounds. That's the value of a collective like this. Let's close it out with Tor's final words for us today. And then, we have Robert's hand up too.
Very quickly, Zach is requesting that we have this recording quickly so we can share it. And before going to Tor's final words, Jim, I'd like to remind you, we don't have to wait for anybody to create a TED Talk. We can do this, you and I, we can organize and publicize a similar event to make sure that there are hundreds, if not thousands, of people watching us on Facebook and YouTube. And I would like to talk with you about that.
Wonderful.
I'm through.
I
Sure.
just want to emphasize that Michael made a very good point, that even liquefied natural gas is hard for a lot of people to understand.
Yeah.
And what I present is probably 100 times more complicated. And I confess, my colleagues have gone silent one by one. I think they tried and they just stopped because they realized how difficult it is.
Yeah. Well, this is where I think our group comes in, is we have hope and we have a vision for this being a planet that we can save. I want this for my grandchildren. I want them to be able to live a life that is filled with some of the glories of this planet, some of the beauties that we have. And it's difficult to be talking about being a panentheist in an interfaith organization, of seeing the spirit of life flow through us all and celebrating that, and knowing that that spirit of life is everywhere, in my point of view of it, and that is the source of my hope for all of us, because as others have said, it may be slow, but we believe the path of history leads toward justice for all. And that's what I'm here for, environmental justice for each and every one of us.
Amen.
As are the rest of you folks. And thank you for taking the time this day. See
Thanks,
all of
everyone.
you